Hello, hello. Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Good to see you. Hey, Louise, Marissa. I feel like I'm hanging out with my friends. I just love this class. Good to see you guys. All right. Looks like we're getting out of the waiting room. Today, I'm actually really excited. Today, we're going to talk all about mindset, workspace, environment for success. And I'm not the only teacher here. So I invite you to speak up and share what you do that helps you be in a good headspace. And this is actually one of my favorite classes to teach. We're not going to learn dialogues today. It's all about you, your energy, and kind of like booby trapping yourself to be successful. I think that's a good way to summarize today's lesson. Now, I know a lot of you are watching recording. A lot of people email me and say, I won't be there this week, but I'll watch the recording. So as always, if you're watching and you have a question, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to help. Well, let's go ahead and jump into today. We have a good bit to cover. And I will prompt at different times to hear your ideas. Again, I don't think I'm the only teacher on this subject. I think we all have a lot to share. So we'll do that today. Quick reminder, even though we're not talking about calls today necessarily, make sure you're following the TCPA guidelines and make sure you're legally safe. Okay, well, let's jump into today. So we're going to talk about the schedule for success, the workspace for success. So what does your literal actual workspace look like? And then we're going to talk about mindset for success. So let's jump into schedule. So the golden hour for the phones is before 11 o'clock for a first time conversation. Who here has read the book, The One Thing? I think probably a lot of you. Does anybody remember what comparison they make for willpower? There's an analogy that they use. Anybody? Okay. So they talk about how willpower is kind of like a cell phone battery. And you start your day off with a fresh battery, 100%. But as the day goes on, it gets depleted. And they don't talk about this in the book, but I will tell you, I'm kind of a nerd with researching how the brain works. I love neuroscience. And there's a book I read that talked about a study. And what they were doing was studying how much willpower do we have? And how does it affect us if we're doing a lot of hard things? How does that affect us throughout the day? I think that's a great topic for us right now. And what they did in the study was they had two groups of people come to a facility. And the first group of people, they put a plate of cookies in front of them. And they said, we're going to have you do some math here in a few minutes, and we're going to just see how long it takes you to do the math projects. And while you're waiting, fill out the paperwork, and you cannot eat the cookies. So the cookies are in front of them, but they're having to exercise willpower to not eat the cookies that are freshly baked and sitting in front of them. So they're not allowed to eat the cookies. Then they go to do the math, and they're really seeing how long do these people put effort into completing the math. Now, what they did not know is the math was designed to be unsolvable. So the point is, this could have gone on for days, depending on the people. They were not solvable problems. So they really were just trying to test how long will people go at something when they've had to use willpower before they started the hard thing. Are y'all tracking with me? Feel like I'm not explaining it great. Okay, good. And so the second group of people they had come in, and the second group of people, they were allowed to eat the cookies. Now, they might have had personal willpower. Maybe it didn't align with their nutrition goals. But the point is, they were allowed to have however many cookies they wanted. They didn't have to use quite as much willpower. And then they put them in the room to work on the math problems. Well, the people that did not have to use willpower, they were allowed to eat the cookies. They lasted 6 times longer than the ones who weren't. And the only difference is willpower to either eat cookies or not eat cookies while they were waiting to go in there. Isn't that fascinating? I think that's fascinating.
Wait a minute. The people that who were the people that solved the problem or spent more time
Well, there
solving
was no problem to be solved. Like
it?
they were
Okay.
unsolvable. But the people that were allowed to eat the cookies, and what that means, now that's not the healthier choice here, but they were studying willpower. So they didn't have to use willpower to sit in a room with cookies but not eat them. They were allowed to eat the cookies. That group lasted 6 times longer attempting to solve the math They still didn't solve it. It was unsolvable, but they gave it 6 times more time than the people who had to use willpower to not eat the cookies. Does that make sense?
What I'm hearing is that cookies are good for us.
Totally. Go get some right now. Don't tell anyone where you learned that. But yeah, so their point is this is why when you start off in the early part of your day, how many of us have said, I'm going to eat a certain way today? And breakfast is awesome. And lunch, awesome. And then you're dealing with all your work stuff. And then you go to drive home from work and you stop and you pick up fast food or order a pizza. Has anybody ever done this? And you might wonder, why am I doing this? It doesn't align with my goals. And their point is it's willpower. And it is a limited resource that you have. And they talk about that in the book The One Thing. And then this book I read where they're talking about the study with the cookies and all that stuff, that is alluding to the same exact thing. Why are we talking about this right now? This is why it serves you to call people that don't know you yet before 11 o'clock in the morning. Their battery is the most full in the morning. They haven't had to use a lot of willpower yet. So we know that if you call people that don't know you, they are more likely to pick up in the morning. And the study showed before 11, it started to die off around 11. And that would be first time conversations. You don't have rapport yet with these people. Okay. But also I want you to think through where else could this apply in your life, right? If you have something that is a goal of yours and perhaps that's not something I really want to do, maybe you should do it early in the day before your willpower is depleted. Got it? This is pretty relatable, right? I mean, I feel like when I read this, it made so much sense to me about myself, about why certain things have been difficult. And it's really the way I set up my day. So all that to say, for you making calls to people you don't know, and for people to pick up a call from someone they don't know, the best thing in the morning is to call those new leads who you don't know yet, you don't have a relationship with. So here's an example, okay? This is an example from the team that I come from. By no means am I saying that this is what your schedule should be, but you could adopt it if you like it. So what we did is from 8 to 8:30, we had a team meeting. And what that was is we would read books together. Our leader believed that readers are leaders. And so he said, every morning, I want us to read a book together and then talk about it. So we would read for about 10, 15 minutes and then discuss. That's literally all that was. Then we would practice our conversations. And yes, every day from 8:30 to 8:45, everybody was practicing their dialogues and their conversations. Then from 8:45 to 9 was prep. And by 9 o'clock, we were all on the phones. Agents, inside sales agents, everybody in sales was on the phones. And what that looked like was a 3-hour run with a 15-minute break in the middle. And everybody took their break a little bit differently. But the idea is go for 90 minutes, take a 15-minute break, and then go for another 90-ish minutes. Now, the study would actually argue the best time to be on the phone is 8 to 11, not 9 to 12. But the reason I'm showing you our schedule is the value of reading books as a team and working on your leadership. And what our leader said to us, he said, maybe we're not on the phone at the exact best hour by starting at 9 versus 8, but who we are as people will be better because of how we're developing ourselves. And as long as we're consistent, that's what matters. Well, the first year on his team, I sold 85 houses. And when I left the team, they were up to 500 a year that they were selling. So I think they know what they're talking about, right? So his point was be consistent, whatever you choose. But the study does show before 11 is the best time. Then take a lunch. Please take a lunch. Please take a lunch. Even if you're not eating lunch, go for a walk, get out of the office, do something different. I feel very firm on this, and it comes from my years of coaching. So I've been very blessed to coach a lot of high-level players, rainmakers, people who run teams, individual agents that are knocking it out of the park. And what I've noticed is when their performance starts to drop, I'll ask them, are you taking a lunch break? No. And I get it, because if you feel behind, you don't feel like you have time for a lunch break, do you? Because you feel like you're behind. And sometimes I'll say, when was the last time you took a vacation without addressing work on your vacation? And one agent I asked this to started crying when I asked that question. Now, it sounds counterintuitive, but taking a break actually causes your performance to go up. And I've seen it. If I had all of my clients as a case study, you would see it. I'm not going to share because it's private, confidential. I don't tell people who my clients are. But if I could pull them all on screen and have an interview and a graph above their head of their performance, what I've noticed is either right before the vacation or right after the vacation, they hit their goal. And I don't know all the reasons that is, to be quite honest with you. But I would have them like, I don't feel like I have time. I feel like I need to be working. And then they would just schedule the vacation anyway. And they would either hit goal right before or right after that break without fail. This is like a consistent thing that I know. So that's why I'm being so direct about please take a lunch break and please make sure you take a vacation. I want you to write down a question. It's not in your notes. This is something my coach asked me, and it's been a game changer. So here's the question for you. How often do you need time off to avoid burnout? How often do you need time off to avoid burnout? And my coach's point was, and this, we all can relate to this. You get burnt out, and then what? You schedule the vacation. And how far away is the vacation? 3 months, 6 months. So you're just operating in burnout until that happens. So for me, what I found helpful was one weekend a month, I took a 3-day weekend. And then every 6 months, I took 2 to 3 weeks off work in a chunk. And I started making money. I like more money. My income went up. I was a lot happier. And I think it's because of that break. So all this is coming from take a lunch break at some point in your day. But I really encourage you to think through that question. How much time off or how often would you need time off to avoid burnout? I am curious real quick. What's your answer to that? And there's not a right or wrong answer. Everybody here is wired differently. But what would that look like for you to avoid burnout?
We take quarterly vacations in our family, like
That's awesome.
one for a week. And then I've heard of the 357, or is it the 1357?
I'm not sure. Describe it for us.
Susan is, because she and I are on the same. And Deb, isn't it the one? Is it the 135?
The 135, I think I think you're talking about a goal setting thing, unless it just happens to have the same name.
Yeah. It's like one day off a week,
Like one day off a week, right?
3 days off a
weekend.
month.
Every month. And then I don't
Maybe
remember.
it's 137 and 1 week off a quarter. Maybe
One
that's
week
what,
quarter.
maybe
Yeah.
it's 137.
Which interestingly, if you follow the 12-week year, it's kind of built in that you have a week every quarter because that's 48 weeks. Yeah, 137. I feel like I'm at an auction. Do I hear a 12? Anyone? Anybody? But yeah, so here's the concept, whatever we want to call it, is you have to make sure you're taking breaks. Those of you that do that regularly, I'm curious what you've seen with your performance. I can say it, but sometimes it helps if someone else has an example. To be honest, where this came from for me was when I was a college recruiter and I was way behind goal. And my manager said, "When was the last time that you took off work?" And I couldn't remember. Because when you're behind, it feels like you can't, right? Like, I gotta, I can't afford to take time off. I'm behind. She forced me. She said, "You're not taking your laptop home, give it to me, and you're taking a 3-day weekend." And I was so stressed because I was like, I'm behind goal. I can't afford to take time off. I came back, I hit goal. So when I started coaching people and I saw that pattern, I was like, well, let's try it and see what happens. And sure enough, they hit goal right before break or right after break. And then when they started implementing how much time off do I need to avoid burnout, that really was the ticket to everything. And for most people, it looks like some sort of monthly thing and then a once in a while big thing. And you got to just think through for yourself what would work. Like for me, Luis, I know myself, I'm wound up. It takes me a good 5-6 days to quit thinking about work. So for me, I've learned I need 2 weeks at a time, minimum, because the second week is really the actual vacation. So you just have to know yourself. Good.
I
Yeah,
also
Alex-
find that taking taking like a Monday off
Yeah.
or a Friday off every week really helps with
Mm.
my I'm not consistent with any of this, by the way, and that's my goal, is to become much more consistent with
Yeah.
taking time off, because
Yeah.
we all get fried.
Yeah.
I remember at the end of the year, this year, I was literally going on fumes last year,
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
on fumes, and couldn't wait to go away for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so important. And guys, all of this is coming off of the ideal schedule. But let me just say, I think a lot of you can relate to this, but as someone that took care of a cancer patient for 11 years, none of them ever, my mom started a nonprofit for cancer patients. So for a period of time in my life, I was around cancer patients all the time. You know what? None of them said, I wish I worked more. None of them, not one single person. Now listen, I value work because work gives you the money. Like me working provided the money to take care of my mom. So I'm not downing work. I think work is highly important and it feeds the goals. But what I heard most often was, I wish I had spent more time with my family. I wish I had done the thing that I always said I wanted to do. And that would have, travel the country, whatever. Their answers were all different. But I think that's part of why I'm spending so much time on today's webinar, emphasizing the importance of taking a lunch break and the importance of taking some time off on a regular basis. It's very, 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 very important. Okay. Sasha, say it quickly because we do need to move on. Go ahead.
What I'm getting out of this is depending on what stage in life you're in, being able to take 2 weeks off, and maybe if it's just one day a week, is to make sure that when you are taking that time off, that you're fully there.
Yes.
And that whenever you are in work, you're fully engaged right there. So that way you're not feeling spread thin, or the family that you're there asking you to stop talking about it, or like, let's, focus on being outside, or however. So
Yes.
I think that's what really stuck out to me right here.
I'm really glad you spoke up. Sasha, you said that so beautifully, of be 100% wherever you are. Be 100% there. If you are using your phone, the client that I said she cried when I was like, when was the last time you took off? I mean, I want to be clear about something. It took us months to get her to the point she would agree to take a 3-day weekend. And the first time she did it, she took her phone with her and still worked. And it did help some. I'm not talking like, okay, yeah, I'll schedule a vacation. I mean, this was because it's mindset. It's mindset. She saw that it helped. So I encouraged her to do it again. And I said, what would have to happen this time around for you to not touch your phone? And she gave her phone to her sister. And she was so stressed out about it. Our coaching call after that, she was like a whole new person. And she's done it ever since. So this is not, I know some of you, this is causing anxiety. It's mindset. And I love what you're saying in the chat box. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't do it. So do y'all catch it? Take a lunch break, take a vacation. Are we good? Everybody get the gist here? It's vitally important. Yeah. So take a lunch break. You will find that you do better when you come back to the office because of that lunch break. Then from 1 to 2, I have admin. Let me explain this. Have you ever been doing lead gen in the morning and you set an appointment and then you have all the admin that has to happen because you set an appointment, whether it's running a comp or prepping or whatever? Well, Harvard studied the best time of day to be on the phone, and there's a big dip from 1 to 2. So that's just less people pick up the phone. So why not, instead of stopping during the golden hour, why not just put the time in your calendar, block that you have an appointment, don't double book yourself, and then save everything else admin related until that 1 or 2 o'clock spot. It just makes sense. If I'm going to call for an hour, I'd rather call in a high pickup hour versus a low pickup hour. So 1 to 2 is great for being off the phone and doing admin type stuff. All right. Now, for those of you that are inside sales agents, from 2 to 5, I recommend hopping back on the phone. And that is, again, the study showed 3 to 5 was another top hour. Well, hours. The study stopped at 5 o'clock. What I will tell you in my experience is really going until like 8 p.m. is actually awesome. I'm not recommending you work until 8 p.m. But anywhere from 3 to 8, from my experience, tells me that's a great time to be on the phone. The study stopped at 5 o'clock and they say 3 to 5. Okay. Sometimes I would do a call night. So if it got to be halfway through the month and I'm behind goal, we just had a standard of, okay, we're going to do a call night. And we would all leave the office, just take a break around like 3, 4 o'clock, come back around 6, and our lender would bring us pizza and beer, and we would call from 6 to 8. And we would get all kinds of people picking up that never picked up during the day, and it helped us get back on track with our goal. And that is because it is great to call even into the evening. You don't want to go too much past 8:30. Okay. And then 5 to 5:30 is prep for the next day. So this is the schedule we actually followed. Again, you do not have to follow this exact schedule, but I will tell you this schedule is what helped a lot with succeeding. I mean, I don't think I would have sold 85 houses my first year if I didn't have a routine schedule. I mean, and I was on a team, just to be clear. Like, I had the help of a team. I did not do that single agent. And still, that's a lot of houses to sell. And I don't think that would have happened without a schedule. So any questions on the schedule before we move on to workspace and other things? Drunk dials, Louise said. Well, let me tell you, when you call at night, I wasn't drunk, but the people I called, some of them were. One guy, I asked him what was key. I remember this so clearly. He was a renter. And I said something like, what's keeping you from being a homeowner? And he got real quiet. And then he goes, I don't know. He just started crying. And I was like, I think I found a drunk one. I think I did. Or he was just very emotional about not being a homeowner. Okay, schedule for success. So here's the big picture to take it more high level. If you are an inside sales agent, you want 75% of your day to be on the phone, which would be 6 out of 8 hours. Now, here's the thing and why I'm saying this. I coach an inside sales agent who said her leader has her in every single agent meeting as well. Well, that's a lot of time off the phone. And guess what? She's struggling to hit her goal. So we've adjusted a few things. And so that's why I give you this benchmark. You can have death by meeting. So if you are an inside sales agent, I would track your time and make sure that 6 out of 8 hours you are actively lead generating or converting. And that gives you 2 hours for meetings, admin. That should be plenty of time in your day. Okay, if you're an agent, it's about 40%, which is 3 out of 8 hours a day. What I would say is if you don't have clients, then do more until you have clients that you're busy in the afternoon. I got this from Abe Shreve. Does anybody here know Abe Shreve? He's a coach that's been around for a long time. If you're an OG around here, you probably know him. He's pretty awesome. He said something that changed my brain. He said, before noon, you have a lead generation business. And then after 12 o'clock, you have a real estate business where you service the clients you have. That was amazing. I see Deb is a little mind blown by that. Yeah. So before lunch, I have a lead generation business. After lunch, you service the clients you have and you have a real estate business. Now, one way to get very good at that is in your buyer and listing presentations, tell your clients that. So I used to tell clients, hey, before noon, I'm not available. And it's because I'm actually looking for a house for you. Or if they're a seller, I'm looking for a buyer for you. You know what they would say? Something like, go on, girl, get it. Like, please, I love that. I love that you do that. So I set up the expectation in the presentation. I'm not available before noon, but it's because I'm actually working for you. And then my office hours are from 12 to 6 or whatever you choose. And that let them have clear expectation. Then my voicemail would say, if you're reaching me before noon, I'll get back to you after 12 o'clock. And they already knew because it was not an issue. They actually thought it was awesome. Well, I don't know if they all thought it was awesome, but they did not argue with this. They understood it because I explained, I'm actually looking for a house for you. And I have Abe Shreve to thank for that mentality. So again, before lunch, a lead gen business. After lunch, you have a real estate business where you're servicing the clients you have. Okay. All right. So the first half of the day or the first half of your lead gen is new contacts. The second half is follow-ups, and that's the idea of gaining yardage. Remember way back a long time ago, we used the football analogy and we said, think of every conversation of how can I move them forward? So the second half of your lead gen time, I want you to think of it like, how can I move people forward that I already am in contact with? Okay. And then just for a point of reference, this is hand dialing, which is what we recommend. 6 to 8 contacts an hour is pretty typical. So I put that there because sometimes people will say, I don't know, am I talking to enough people? Am I efficient? Well, we studied this, and 6 to 8 contacts an hour is pretty typical if you're hand dialing. Now that means you're pretty on point. That's about one person every 10 minutes or so picking up the phone. Now, obviously, if I'm setting an appointment, I might have a 15-minute conversation and talk to 4 people that hour. And then the next hour, I might talk to 8. So but you're just looking for somewhere around 6 to 8 contacts an hour is about right. Yep. Okay. What else is typical? 20 a day, 20 contacts. And remember, a contact, we've talked about this in a past class. A contact means they picked up the phone and they knew it was about real estate. Okay. I count phone contacts only. You may count text and email, that's fine. But what I'm talking about right now is phone contacts. So 20 contacts a day is pretty typical for an agent if you're working before noon in a lead gen business. And then inside sales agents tend to average around 40. Now, this is one of my favorite parts of today's webinar. Let's talk about dopamine for a minute. Anybody know what dopamine is? What is it?
Feel good drug.
Yeah, it's the feel-good hormone. Yes. Now, there's a lot of different ways that it's released, but one of the main ways that dopamine is released in your body is when you did something you said you would do. Who here has dreaded going to the gym and then you went to the gym and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I went. I feel so much better. That's dopamine. That's not just your emotions. That is actually physically your body is releasing dopamine. I think that's awesome. So here's a mind twist for you. If I said my goal is 20 contacts by lunchtime, when do I get dopamine? At lunchtime, when I hit 20, when my lead gen is over, if I'm an agent following like 9 to 12. So what if instead we made hourly goals? And what if instead I said, you know what, between 9 and 10, I'm going to talk to 6 people. And guess what? At 10 o'clock, if you have talked to 6 people, guess what your body's going to do? It's going to give you dopamine. And you know what dopamine does is it increases motivation and the feel good feeling. Why would I want to get that at the end of the day? Why would I not want to get that all throughout the day? Right? So then, okay, 10 to 11, I'm going to talk to 6 more people. When I do that, I get more dopamine. So why not use this to your advantage, right? So there's 2 things that I recommend. Let me put the slide back up. And it kind of just depends on your personality. What I recommend is either create a before lunch and after lunch goal. So if I'm an inside sales agent and my goal is 40 contacts a day, I'm not going to count only at the end of the day. I'm going to say 20 contacts before lunch, 20 contacts after lunch. Who here just felt their like anxiety around 40 contacts drop when I said 20 before lunch, 20 after lunch? All of a sudden that just sounds a little more doable, right? And what if I said, okay, we'll talk to 7 people an hour? That feels even more doable, right? By the way, all that equals, if you did that for 6 hours, you'd actually get more than 40 contacts. So breaking it down just helps your brain grab onto it. So I recommend either a before lunch, after lunch goal or an hourly goal. Now, I will admit, I'm not the most detailed person when I'm talking to people. So I chose before lunch and after lunch. And my goal was 20 before lunch in set 1. And then I go to lunch. And then 20 after lunch in set 1. And then I go home. And it worked. There's a client I had who his boss was not telling him to talk to 50 people a day. He was an inside sales agent. But for his goal financially, he needed to talk to 50 people a day. Are y'all tracking? Okay. And he was struggling to hit it. It was like, and honestly, I even thought 50 is pretty high. Like 40 is doable, but 50 really is stretching it. So we said, all right, let's do the hourly goal thing. And we broke it down per hour. How many would he need to talk to per hour? And guess what? he started consistently hitting 50. In fact, many days he would get above 50, like 52, 55. And after a little while of this, he's like, I don't know why I made this so hard. It's actually not that difficult. But he had hourly goals. So it was like that laser focus. And then he got the dopamine, which carried him through the next hour. Do you see how beautiful this is? So I want to know from you, tell me in the chat box, are you more of a before lunch, after lunch person, do you think? Or are you going to be more of an hourly goal person? And there's no right or wrong. It's just curious. Hourly? Yeah, it looks like most everybody's hourly. Yeah, that's good. Before lunch, after lunch? Yeah. I think I liked that one because my personal goal was to set 2 appointments a day. So it was easy to think one before lunch and one after lunch. Where this came from is when I was a college recruiter, I also had a goal to set 2 appointments a day. And my regional director came into my cube. You know, I have little cubicles. And he had his coffee cup. And he was like chill as could be. He's like, how are you coming on your goal? And I was stressed. I was like, I don't know. I'm struggling to hit 2 a day. And he like leaned on the wall of my cube with his little coffee cup. And he's like, Anna, set one before lunch and then go to lunch. And then set one after lunch and then go home. And something about that just did something in my brain. And I started hitting the one before lunch and one after lunch. So totally works. Cool. Are you guys ready to move on? Okay. Let's talk about workspace, and I'll move a little faster on this one. So workspace, conversation wall. What I mean by that is you will memorize what you look at constantly. So do you guys have set places where you do your lead gen on a regular basis? If not, I recommend it. Most of you are nodding your head yes. Like for me, technically I could coach from anywhere in my house or the office. I always coach here. And part of that is if you look at the wall, do you see my whiteboard up there? I have different questions. Like that's all stuff that I use as a coach. Well, because it's right there, if I get stuck on a call or think I don't know what to say right now, I literally can just look up there. So what's one habit that would free you to have powerful focus? It's right there. What would accepting responsibility for your success look like? It's right up there. And then when I was talking to buyers and sellers, it was what makes you want to move? What would blank do for you? And it's all right there. And that will help you if you get stuck. You can just glance at the wall. Or if you are in a place of like, I have no idea what to ask. I have no clue that they're stumping me right now. Just pull a question off the wall. So when I say conversation wall, what I mean is get your dialogues up visible in your workspace. What's beautiful about that is you will naturally just start to memorize it because it's what you're looking at all the time. And then what I like to do is once I've internalized it, I'll erase the whiteboard and put up new stuff. And then that helps over time to internalize. So conversation wall. I also recommend 2 screens. Now that does depend on your role. But what I find is a lot of times during lead gen, I'm pulling leads from one system and then I'm copying and pasting them to my CRM or something. Now, it might not sound like a big deal, but if you're doing that all day, multiple times a day, the fractional amounts of time that eats up really adds up over the course of a week and then over the course of a month. So if you find yourself doing a lot of minimizing, maximizing of the screen, copy, paste, if that's your life, then I would recommend that you get 2 screens. And if not, don't worry about it. Okay, next, a stand-up desk. Who here has a stand-up desk? Awesome. I do as well. If you do not and you want one, what I like to use, and I'm not like a sponsor for them or something. They don't know I even talk about them. VariDesk is what I use. And what I like is it's on a spring, so it doesn't have to be plugged in. It's not electronic. And when I want to stand up, I just push the little spring and it rises up. And when I want to sit down, it goes back down. Very easy. Anybody else have a brand that you recommend just to help those out that might want one? Nope. Okay. VariDesk. Big fan. Yes, Samara. A stand-up desk is helpful when you're a pacer. Yes, that is very true. It also burns calories when you're standing up. So there's that. Okay, next, mobile workspace. Now, I feel very validated after 2020 when how many of you left the office having no idea you wouldn't be going back for a long time? Anybody? So for years, I had been saying get a mobile workspace, and now people really believe me because 2020 happened. But have you ever been driving down the road and a lead calls you back, and then you grab like a napkin from your glove box and you pull over and you try to scribble some notes? It's not exactly ideal. So what I did was I went into like Dollar General, one of those places, and I just bought one of these little cheap 3-ring binder things. Okay. And everything that was on the wall, I took it down and I photocopied it. Because I thought if it's important enough that I have it hanging in my workspace, it's important enough that I want it with me all the time. So I took it down, did photocopies. Then I copied the buyer seller guides and those put those in here. A list of open-ended questions, I put them in here. And this folder has been with me since about 2008. And it just goes with me everywhere. Now I have coaching models in here because I coach full-time. But this was the tabs. It looks the same. Buyer sheets, seller sheets, everything I would need. And this just lived in my briefcase. And everywhere I went, this went with me. And that way I was constantly prepared. If a lead called me, no matter where I was, I had the resources I need to have a really quality conversation. Okay. So I recommend something like that. Take it with you everywhere. This one is huge. Goals in view. Goals in view. What I mean by that, it's a lot simpler than you may think. It's actually very simple. So let me show you. When I have a client that is struggling to hit their goals, this is the first trick I pull out of the hat, and it usually solves it. We don't usually need anything else, unless it might be some skill improvement. But like if they're pretty good with their dialogues and it's like, I just can't seem to hit my goal, this is the go-to. So take your goal. My goal was 10 appointments a day, so I'm going to put a 10 up here. And what they did, or what you would want to do, is take your pen, and when you set an appointment, write the last name over the number. And now I know I have 9 left. And say I set an appointment with Marissa, I would write Bright over number 9, and now I have 8 left. And you don't do any more than a week for this. If you do more than a week, it's a little too overwhelming for your brain. So it's 1 week at a time. I had a client last week email me that she broke a record. She's been in this role for 3 years. She broke a record last week, and I asked her, what did you do? She's like, literally all I did was put my goal in view. That was the only tweak that she made. And then I have another client who wanted to set 12 appointments a week. She could not get past 10. So we had her do this, and I had her put 12 countdown on the board. The next call, guess how many appointments she set? It's not 12. She set 15. Yep. Couldn't break 10, couldn't break 10, couldn't break 10, couldn't break 10. Did a countdown, beat her max ever by 5. So this works. I don't know all the sciencey reasons why. I just read in a book, put your goal in view and you're 80%, it's 80 something, like 82% more likely to hit it. So I just started doing it. And then I started keeping track of client successes, and it works. So putting your goals in view. Yes. Yeah, Louise, what you focus on expands. Absolutely. A tip I got from a client today, I thought this was smart. She did a countdown on a printer piece of paper and printed it, and then stuck it in one of those sleeves, you know, the clear sleeves. I don't know why I've never thought of this. And she writes on the sleeve with a marker, so she doesn't have to rewrite her goals every week. It's like, that's so smart. So that's thank you to one of the clients for that goal. All right, so get your goals in view. Anybody else, what do you have in your workspace that helps you be successful that you think we should know about? And because of time, share it, but just don't take forever. So what else do you have in your workspace that helps? And you can unmute as well, by the way. Let's see. Oh, my puppy, yes. Feel free to bring it on screen. I love dogs. Last night I was at a restaurant and wanted to pet a dog, and the owner saw, and they walked all the way around a huge square of tables to bring the dog to me. I was like sitting on the internal table, and they went way out of their way just so I could pet the dog. Very kind. The board was for appointments. Yeah, Susie. So I use the board for appointments, not contacts, but you could use it for whatever you want. But what I wanted to be paying attention to my appointment goal. So that's why I did that. That's why I did appointments. Some agents, you want to make sure it's controllable, whatever it is. I would not put closings up here. Can I really totally control when my closings happen? No. I can control the activities that get me closings, but I can't control if a closing gets moved. That's not always in my control. So whatever you put on the board, just make sure it's something you actually can control and that you actually have the power to hit it. A focus mode. Yes. Focus mode on the iPhone. You just made me think of something. I have a app I want to tell you about. It's called Brick. Have any of you ever heard of Brick? It's really cool. I'll show you. Can you see my phone right now? It says Brick, tap to Brick. So there's a physical device that actually looks a lot like this. It's a brick. It's like a physical little teeny tiny brick. I have it stuck on my fridge. And if I want to block everything on my phone other than my phone and texting, so it makes it like an old school phone, I hit tap to Brick. And when I do that, see how it says ready to scan? I have to physically touch this to the brick on my fridge. And when that happens, it'll lock down any apps that I set. You can tell it what to lock and what not to lock. For me, I pretty much just have my phone and texting available and everything else is blocked. Now I don't have it here to show you, but you basically just go like this and then it blocks your phone. The only way to unblock it is to go back and touch the physical device. I had to do that because, guys, I apparently have low self-control when it comes to my phone. I've had people say, but you have the thing where you can say, stop me after 15 minutes, turn off. No, I just hit ignore. I have to have an actual physical device that I have to walk to lock my phone and unlock my phone. Okay. And I know I'm not the only one. So Brick is the name of that. It's a game changer. I highly recommend. Oh, Sasha says I work from home. I work best if I'm wearing shoes. That's good self-awareness. And I put my phone color to black and white. I don't even know how to do that. It's amazing. Awesome. Let's do this. Susie, would you write down what you want to say? I'm a little just watching time, but I will come back to you at the end to just jot it down so you don't forget. Okay. All right. Awesome. So the last thing, let's talk about mindset real quick. And people can have funny feelings about the word mindset. So we can also call it head talk. And for this today, I want to give you an analogy and we're going to do a quick activity. So grab a piece of paper. If you don't have one already, just grab one while I'm talking. Who here likes to hike or backpack, or maybe you like to go off-roading? Anybody? Okay, a few of you, yeah. Some of you are like, you are definitely more country than me. I used to live in the city and was not into any of this stuff, but I am now. But I think you all will track with this analogy, whether you hike or not, okay? There's a trail that I like to go on in my truck that's about an hour from here. And it used to be that I would come to a certain point in the road and I could either choose to go down into the left or up into the right, okay? Well, I hadn't gone up for about a year and I went and I got to that spot and I was very confused because when I looked down into the left, there was no trail. It was like greenery everywhere. And I looked up into the right and I'm like, I'm in the right spot, but this is weird, but the left side had become overgrown. So let me ask you, how does a trail become overgrown in the woods?
People stop going into it,
Yeah.
running on it.
When it's
Yeah.
not used. Yeah.
It's not used. Exactly. Now, guys, what I'm about to say changed everything for me about 3 years ago. And when I teach this, most people say, I've understood the power of how we think, but I never thought of it quite like that. Okay. So that trail became overgrown because we quit walking on it and quit driving on it. Now, if I said, I want to create a new path in the woods that doesn't exist, what would I have to do?
Drive over it repeatedly, like constantly.
Yes, repeatedly is the key. So I can't just say, I want to create a new trail. Let me go run in the woods randomly today, and then I'll run in the woods randomly tomorrow, and then I'll run in the woods randomly the next day. Because I'm not in the same spot every day. So I'm not, do you see the problem there? I'm not going to create a path. Well, guys, I had this huge revelation about 3 years ago when it comes to how I talk to myself. And I would say affirmations. I like to use Bible verses or quotes. You could use affirmation that you write yourself. The point is, what are you feeding your brain? And the way that would look for me is every day I would pick a different one. Anybody relate to that? And it felt awesome because every day I'm picking something to focus on that was positive. And I'm sure that helped me a little bit, but I wasn't really seeing big change in my thinking. Well, my coach has a degree in neuroscience, and she explained to me that our brain literally has pathways, the neural pathways. And she said, when you have a thought repeatedly, it literally creates a pathway that they can see on a scan in your brain, like a hiking trail. And what's really cool is if you quit thinking certain thoughts, the pathways actually go away. That's amazing. And I realized I've been working on my mindset for a long time, but I'm randomly running through the woods every day. I need to pick one spot to hang out for a while and do it over and over and over and over until I actually cut a path. And that was my big takeaway about 3 years ago that changed everything. So here's what I want you to do. Grab a piece of paper. I'm not going to ask you to read this to anyone. I'm not going to ask you to show it to anyone. This is just for you. I want you, and it will feel weird for just a minute. I won't leave you here. I want you to write down the most negative thought that you have about yourself or your business. Either one, because how you think about yourself affects your business. So what is the most negative thought that you have either about yourself or your business? And maybe it's a thought you don't even tell anybody because it's so negative. Are y'all good? I know it probably doesn't feel awesome, but we're not going to stay here. Now, here's the thing. When you walk in on the path in the woods for the first day, do you have a path after that first day? No. The answer is no, right? Like I've walked in the woods and maybe I stamped down the grass or something, but I don't have a clear path yet. Well, with affirmations, when you're working on changing your thinking, the first day you say an affirmation to yourself, you probably will feel like you're lying to yourself. Have you ever felt that way working on how you're thinking? I used to say it feels amazing, and that's how I started a lot of mine. Like it feels amazing to hit this goal, or it feels amazing to sell 85 houses. It feels amazing to pay off my house. But it felt like this is dumb, it's not true. I don't believe that it's possible. But you start saying that every day and multiple times a day, and you will actually cut a new neural pathway in your brain and you will start to believe it. In my own experience, what I found once I got consistent with my language day after day, usually about 6 weeks, I started to believe whatever I had been telling myself. Now, the longer you've had a negative thought, the longer it might take to replace it. So acknowledge that as well. So what I want you to do now is underneath the most negative thing you wrote down, I want you to write down the complete opposite, and it will probably feel like a lie. It probably won't feel true. And that's okay. That's pretty normal at this point. And now I want you to scratch out the negative like it's your bank statement. I don't want you to ever read that again. Get rid of it. It is your bank account number. Scratch it out so a thief doesn't find it and take all your money. Get rid of that negative statement. And what you just wrote down, and you might want to tweak it or, finesse it up a little bit. I know we're doing this kind of quickly. But what you just wrote is the statement that you may choose to start telling yourself to cut a new pathway in your brain, and you will likely believe it within about 6 weeks, give or take. Would you like to believe what you just wrote down? Now, there is no pressure here because I realize it's a bit vulnerable and it would be cool to have some vulnerability here. Would anybody like to share their positive statement? I don't want you to read the negative one. We're never speaking it again. But would anybody like to share the positive that you just wrote down? If so, go ahead and unmute yourself. We'll do this for just a second. Jeffrey, did you want to go? I see you
Sure.
unmuted.
Well, I'll share my negative too. My negative tendency is based on my career as an engineer and dealing with contractors is that I assume the worst of people, that they're going to do the wrong thing, the most self-interest that's in their best interest and not in the team's best interest. So I'm just going to keep telling myself that if people are going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And if I can get to that, that would be a huge goal, huge win for me because I just have too much in my life that it makes me think that path from experience. But maybe it's me helping people get to that too by worry.
Yeah. Jeffrey, you just made me think of something, and I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing. Thank you.
Sure. Sorry, I've been off screen. I have to admit, I sometimes multitask. So.
It's okay. So this happened to me earlier this week. Do you ever have a season in life where you feel like everything's going wrong?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
This
Like
morning.
my truck broke down, my fire alarms went off for no reason while I was trying to run out the door. I dropped my vitamins everywhere. I just was like, what is happening? So yesterday I'm at a coffee shop actually working on the slides for next week for this class. And as I'm working, the letter M keeps appearing on the screen. Like I'm holding it down, but I'm not doing anything. And my Google Drive is completely freaking out. I took a video of it actually. And there's a point to this. I'm not just telling you a random story. This absolutely deals with mindset. Let me see if I can find the video really quick because I want you to understand how bad it was. Okay. Hold on. Do you hear that noise? Like the clicking noise? That was
Yes.
the screen on the fritz. Like, hold on. I swear. Okay, see what it's doing? See that?
Oh boy.
And I'm like, what the heck? Well, because everything's been going wrong, I'm like, ugh, my computer must have a virus. Par for the course. Everything's going wrong. I'm going to have to go to the Apple store and have them fix my computer. And I kept looking like, is the key compressed? No. And I was like, ugh, my computer, something must be wrong. Because that's what I had been telling myself. Everything's going wrong. Everything's going wrong. Everything's going wrong. So of course, now I think, yeah, this is wrong too. You know what it was? I forgot that I put my Bluetooth keyboard in my bag. And when I went to pack up my computer, I realized something was sitting on the M key in my keyboard bag. So I had an hour of messaging friends saying, pray for my computer. Does anybody know anything about tech? And really, it was just my keyboard was in my bag. That's it. And the point I'm making, I know that's a silly example, but I had been telling myself everything's going wrong. Well, guess what? That's one more thing that's going wrong. And actually, maybe if my mindset had been different, I would have figured that out a lot faster. So I just say that to you, Jeffrey. Like, I appreciate what you shared. It's so relatable. And yeah, like if we think everybody's going to do us wrong, that's kind of what we see, And I'm excited for you as you change that thinking to see how people show up for you. I'm excited for that. Good. Dee, quickly, and then I want to give you the last two things, and then we'll open it back up at the end. Dee, go ahead.
So mine was my negative was that I'm not
Hang on. Can we actually not read the negative? I'd like to just read the positive.
Okay. The positive is I'm fully capable and worthy and in demand by my peers.
Ooh, I'm in demand by my peers. Can I please steal that? That's so good.
Yeah, you can. You can.
I love it. I love that. That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
thank
it.
you. Thank
You're very
you.
welcome.
Awesome. And in a minute, I'll give you guys more time to share. So here's the idea. Again, it's not good enough to just say a positive statement every day and change it all the time. If you really want to change your thinking, you need to pick a path and stay on it until you actually believe it. And just acknowledge it might feel like a lie the first several times that you say it. Just like in the woods, it takes repetition to create a path. But you will eventually believe it if you actually stick with it. Okay? All right, let's go through a few more things. Mindset for success. If you're on a team motivation. What I mean by that, and this might just depend on your personality, I found that to help me be successful, I had to know the ripple effect of my efforts. So what I personally did is I went to all the agents on my team and I just said, what would it mean for you to have more closings? Like, what would that do for your life? How would that help your family? And I wrote it down. And I stuck it in my workspace and I had that to look at. So if I ever had a moment of like, oh, I just don't feel like doing lead gen, I would look at their goals and my goals and it would keep me going. So that's what I mean by team motivation. If you're not on a team, that might not apply to you and that's okay. Assumptive affirmations. Assumptive affirmation means I'm assuming that this person will work with me. So it could be, well, Dee, like you just said, I'm in high demand. That's assumptive. This person's going to hire me. That's assumptive. This person's going to love me. When I called expireds can be kind of irritable. And when I would call them, I would say, this person's going to love me by the time we hang up. And it became like a game. How can I get them to love me? I'm not even worried about an appointment. How can I get this person to love me by the time we hang up? And I would just say, they're going to love me by the time we hang up. I don't know how yet, but they're going to love me by the time we hang up. And it really changed the way I showed up on those phone calls. Okay. So I would love you to take a moment and just think through from today, what did you learn? I gave you a lot of different tips. Dopamine hacks, before lunch, after lunch, the best time of day to be on the phone, your physical workspace, your mindset. What did you get from today? Not questions yet. I just want to hear, what did you learn? And then we'll do questions in a moment.
I am blown away by the reminder that we have two businesses, primary businesses in this business.
Yep.
And that my mornings, I mean, I've always thought, oh, lead gen in the morning and in the afternoon, I'll follow up with my clients and service them. But I've never really thought about them as two distinct businesses, because if they are two distinct businesses, how are you equally putting energy into both of those businesses to grow them and to sustain them, right? So that was really helpful shift for me in my thinking about my businesses.
That's awesome. If that's the only thing you take from this whole class, you will see ROI. Like, that shift is huge. Thank you to Abe Shreve for introducing that idea. That's who I heard it from. And again, update your voicemail, tell clients when you meet with them for your consult, explain that schedule to them. They will support you. I even used to get voicemails from clients that said, I know you're not available, just call me after 12. I just wanted to tell you an update. It's pretty awesome. I love the chat box. I'm not going to read everything out just for time, but thank you guys for contributing in there. Appreciate your vulnerability. Okay, who else? What did you learn today? Or we'll go ahead with, what questions do you have? Or if you wanted to share your affirmation. I think there was somebody else that wanted to, and I moved on for time. Helly, go ahead.
First off, the book you referenced at the beginning of the session, the name of that book, The Neural.
Yeah, so The One Thing is one of them, and I have to say I don't remember the name of the book, the one that had the study in it. I know it was a health book, and I want to say it might have been called Bright Line Eating, but I mean, I read this years ago.
Okay, so
Yeah.
related to a diet. Okay. And the
Yeah.
other piece is if you could, somebody could remind me, I've forgotten for some reason, brain dead on how to get into our portal, and I need to get into the
Oh,
portal.
email fasttrack@kw.com if it's like a login problem. But real quick, it's just maps.mykajabi.com. I'll show
Yeah,
you.
that's what yeah,
So you might
okay,
need to email fast track. This is the login that I come to. You might
right.
need to email fasttrack@kw.com
Okay,
if it's like a
okay.
actual login problem.
Okay, super. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Well, we are at time and I want to honor your time. Next week, we'll get more back into the language. We're going to start talking about how to set appointments that actually show up. But I hope today that you had at least one nugget that will change the way you approach your business from a mindset perspective. And really, I encourage you to work on how you're thinking and just acknowledge that positive statement you wrote down won't feel true for a while. Most likely. And that's okay. You don't believe it just yet, but you say it enough and you will. I have seen in my own life, there were things that I started telling myself that I was like, I don't know. One of them was I wanted to pay off my house, and that was like wildly unattainable in my brain. And I just started saying it feels amazing to pay off my house by the time I'm 40. It feels amazing to pay off my house. And the best affirmations are written as if you already did it. So it's not, it will feel amazing. It feels amazing to pay off my house by the time I'm 40. And praise God, I did. I paid it off when I was 38. I paid off the house. But when I started saying that, I didn't think it was possible. But once I believed it was possible, it was easier to strategize. Like
Mhm.
it all came from the thinking. Okay. So it really does matter. That's why I'm so passionate about it, if you can't tell. All right, guys, I've really loved hanging out with you today. Thank you again for being here. Join our extra help calls if you haven't been. I think they're fun. They're quickly becoming one of my favorite calls out of this whole program is the extra help calls, and you never know what's going to happen. It's awesome. All right, guys, I will see you in the next class next week. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Anna. Bye,
You're
everybody.
welcome. Oh, thank you,
Thanks. Have a good
Holly.
day.
Thank you, Alora, for sharing.